Hello student, welcome to the online tutorial section. Today we will discuss about the general structures of an operating system. The modern operating system have a layered structure. So there are different type of structures are available, but we will consider only for the layered structures of the operating system. There are different types are available. The bottommost layer forms the hardware interface part of the computer, and the outermost layer forms the user interface. Okay, and so you are able to understand when I'm using the picture to express it in a better way. Okay, so the between these two layers there are other layers of operating system. So each layer is responsible for the set of functions and communicating with the layers below it and above it. Okay, so actually the main phenomenon is the hardware component. You're able to see our hardware components are lies in the below. Okay, and the applications program, that is a user interface on the top, and there are intermediary present as a kernel is present, and from the user app or user of an application, whatever informations are coming, that is first comes to this kernel, and then kernel will send those response or tasks and calls, so systems calls to the hardware, then it will be resolved over here. Okay, so there are so communication can be takes place in both the way. So the main components are the kernel and shell. Okay, so we have to understand this kernel and the shell concept. Okay, so application as a user application. Okay, kernel actually the hardware scheduler of a memory, and shell acts actually the CU sequences. Okay, so what is kernel actually? The outermost layer and the central controlling part of the operating system. So kernel, in a one word you can say it is a innermost layer, and it is the most central controlling part of the operating system. It's always reside in the main memory and directly communicate with the hardware of the computers. So as you can see, just above of the hardware devices, okay, memory and everything, kernel is situated. So kernel is actually having the capability to communicate with the main memory and the other devices, other hardware devices directly. Okay, so a typical kernel contains a program that are used for the basic functions of the operating system. Okay, like process management, memory management, input output device management. Okay, so these are actually the tags are performing by the operating system. So kernel actually look after this part of this operating systems. So it also includes the low-level security features and the GUI of the OS. So kernel also the part of our operating system that user cannot replace or modify. Okay, so we cannot change anything in the kernel. We cannot modify anything in the kernel. So kernel is the heart of the operating system. The term kernel often refers to as the operating system. The critical code of a kernel is stored a special memory are to be protected it from other programs. So it is a vital component as it is the basis for the proper functioning of the entire program. Okay, the kernel performs a varieties of tasks that I've already mentioned, that is the process management, hardware management, handling the interrupts. Okay, so it is perform the memory management, file management also. So a system call is a request by a process to the kernel. Okay, this is what a system calls it may comes. Okay, and so a system call is a request from the process to the kernel. The kernel manages this system's calls also. Okay, so these are actually the functions of a kernel. Okay, now we are coming to the next one is the shell. Okay, so the shell is the layer next to the kernel. Okay, it usually serves as the user interface through which the user interact with the operating systems and act as a command interpreter. So what is command interpreter over here? Whatever instructions is given to the computer by the user, it is this instructions are interpreted by this cell, and then it is processed to the to the kernel, so that kernel can resolve the system call and perform the particular task. The shell is also manages the running of a multiple application program. The shell can be a command line interface that is used in DOS, or a graphical user interface that is used in Mac and Windows. A given operating system can have a both command line and a GUI cell, or more than one command line cell like in Unix. The user can switch between these two depending upon their convenience. So cell is an interface between the user and the kernel. Okay, so it can be a command line, it can be a graphical user interface. Okay, so the user can enter the command to the cell, then it interprets the command to perform a routine task. So furthermore, it executed the program and the shell script. The shell scripts are very, very important. Okay, if I just closely, if you closely look at this one, there is a different commands we have written over there. Okay, so they have a specific meaning, because whenever we are performing or we are giving the instructions, depending upon the instructions, it is performing the tasks. Okay, so that is that what is the instruction or what is the task it is given by the user to the system, that is system to the computer system, that interpretations only can be done by the shell. Okay, shell will interpret this one and then it is forwarded to the kernel. Kernel will treat this as a system call, but because whatever functions as our process are continuing, it is executed, they require some resources or require processor or require any other resources or memory functions, and whatever is required, that is known as a system call. So this systems call also handled by the kernel. So it is very, very important to need the cell, because through the cells kernel getting the instructions. Okay, a shell script is a set of commands. So what is, if the question is come, what is a shell script? Generally they don't ask you these questions. This is the cells and kernel concept is for the higher education, higher purpose, but still you learn that what is a cell script is a set of commands. The user should follow the standard syntax to write the command to the cell. So if you are not following the particular command, so it cannot be interpreted properly. So whenever you are doing or giving any instruction in the form of command, so you have to follow the specific syntax for it. Otherwise, it cannot properly interpret your instructions, and if it is not properly interpreted, then it cannot be provided to the kernel for the proper execution. So to do a proper execution, you need to maintain the proper syntax of the cell. So the combining the cells and the kernel, this is actually the basic or the core structures of the operating system. I hope this topic is clear to you. Thank you, student. I'm ending my lecture over here.